Elden Ring was like, quack, 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 breathe, quack, quack, quack. It just never stopped. Let's discuss why something like Elden Ring is a poster child for positive. I can't even say it seriously. Let's talk about why Elden Ring is good and things going wrong in the gaming industry recently. And I want to use Elden Ring currently as like the poster child for how a game by a AAA studio, which I believe we can say FromSoft is a AAA studio at this point, can just like outshine things that I almost want to say to a degree had more hype. And I'm kind of pointing at Cyberpunk and why there's just like such a difference in them, on top of the reason why indie games just also are doing a lot better in certain aspects, living up to hype. But the core, I guess, stat is Elden Ring had a significant amount of hype around it. It had things going for it advertising wise that was like, oh, George R. R. Martin is gonna be part of it, the dude who did Game of Thrones, and you have our favorite swamp creator and absolute demon lord himself, Miyazaki. And just like various, there were memes, there were jokes, there was some to a degree, I think, a development delay and release delay. On top of everything that was going on with also COVID. Why didn't something like Cyberpunk do very, very well? And there's multiple reasons behind that. There are the fact that it was released way too early. Quality assurance, to my knowledge, to the best they could. And there was definitely some higher up issues that kind of pushed the pedal to the metal, but ended up burning more rubber, leaving not much of a tire to keep going on. But the very scatterbrained point of why I'm just jabbering on right now is why is something like Elden Ring really, really good? And then something like Cyberpunk, still good, but kind of a sign of the times, along with other games like Battlefield 2042, Call of Duty Vanguard. God, I just need to just pop a list of other games that were just like miss, with these giant AAA studios that have all this budgeting, all this income, these massive teams, comparative to a lot of other games that come out in the same breath, and just did not pass up the muster or the moxie of a lot of other games that definitely was nowhere near in scale of budgeting or time or resources put into it, and those games still outshined it. Elden Ring did. Elden Ring did what all these other games haven't been able to do yet, which was it came out, maintained the hype, exceeded expectations, which it didn't even have to do. It could have just been good. It could have just been great. And it was like, that's it. We're done. Go home. We've done it. This is it. And instead, it carved a new foundation of, this is your goal. Your goal is to be as good as an Elden Ring release. Not necessarily like the monetary value behind it, but the reception behind how it did and why it did and who it did, which is all of us. It f***ed us all, because that game is so fun. It's so hard. Literally, you don't even need friends for that, like me. You just need a controller. Don't try mouse and keyboard if you're getting it on PC, and just shut up and enjoy it and take your time. But Google things not to miss in the beginning, because apparently there was like an issue with like people not getting their horse, people not getting the Ash summons. But I'm digressing. Elden Ring is the poster child for AAA releases, and it's gonna be that way for a while, I think, unless Bethesda, which is this is 2022, so unless Bethesda fucking in November just comes out of the gates and makes us all bend over with our wallets firmly between our cheeks for Starfield, Elden Ring is king. And even if Starfield doesn't do well, it means Elden Ring is still king. God, I gotta stop saying so much. The reverse side of that are these other games that I mentioned earlier, which was all these AAA studios. I can, again, just doink the list. And some had hype, some didn't have hype. Some were just regular releases to just churning out the usual formulaic style of doing things. And then some maybe try to change up the mold just a little bit and just kind of just flopped. But they all wore They all were $60 games or more. And just down the drain. There is a game called Vampire Survivors. You haven't tried it yet? Try it. I think it's literally under $5 on Steam. And it has provided a more hours than I put into Battlefield 2042. I would include Valheim because it was successfully released, but they have, I'll literally make an entirely other video on their development cycle and what's going on with them because I'm confused. Point being, which I'm not making very eloquently right now, is that these large studios are constantly churning out, and I'm going to say this in a kind of harsh manner, just straight garbage and it's not very cash money. I'm gonna make a really cringe meme. It's not very cash money about that, and it's just sad because they have this entire community and these cult followings for these video games, and they just flop. And then you have these smaller indie games that come out, which apparently I'm just really bad at having to look up and have to do basically post research after completely jabbering my booty off about this. In that they don't hit like maybe even like the financial success of them, but they still had smooth release, constant updates and patches, wonderful community behind them. But you have it seems to be this like recurring cycle of these major studios just not living up to the expectations anymore, that either we as gamers are not setting like a certain height to them, like we're putting them maybe up on too much of a pillar, or they just basically know that we're becoming cash cows and we're going to put in that money. And a good example, I'm very passionately negative about, which is Destiny 2. I have bought, there's probably like to a point where like half the money I put into Destiny 2, which is not in microtransactions, but just in like purchasing of like DLC or deluxe editions, I should just not have gotten, because I either A, didn't play them, or B, it was not even nearly the amount of money that was worth it into a retime sink. But I love that game, but it's kind of like the child that I love, but does it just keep making mistakes? And it's a whole nother video I can make on. But they came out with Witch Queen, which is where I think Destiny 2 is like finally got the ball in its hands again, and it's done well. But it's another studio that has this giant success behind it, and it just kept dropping the ball. And it's been a recurring theme for like the last 2-3 years. And maybe that's just like thing of the pandemic coinciding, but like I just feel like games are not development, whether it's, and this is, I'm not hacking on developers themselves. I'm not hacking on graphic designers. I'm not hacking on anyone that does the ground level coding and work like that. You all have a special place in my heart for being able to do things that I could never achieve in building these beautiful worlds. Bless your heart, and bless you for putting in your heart and soul into this game to a degree. But whatever higher power is pushing for like certain live service games to be this certain thing, or like content purposely being cut off and withheld and then just being released at a later date that could have easily been released at the same time of the game. What was a Square Enix game that just came out? Oh my god, I remember it just flopping. It was literally like they did Avengers and that had the ball in its hand and then just dropped it. They did another one and it just flopped again. And Elden Ring, look at it. Just look at it. It did so well, and I think everyone kind of feared it wasn't going to do well to a degree, because we'd had so many failure after failure after failure of AAA games. But I remember it wasn't as, I know games still failing was like a very normalized thing, obviously, because you try to, people are always gonna make promises you can't keep. But recently, it has been this like bigger thing to just have massive $60 game titles from these huge series we've all known and loved that just go bam bad, bam bad, bam bad. It was just like just doof 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 gone. I just want it to be known that games can still be on AAA level, beating this dead horse Elden Ring. Elden Ring kind of just built off of what the Dark Souls formula was, and it did it really well. I really liked the game. It took me a while to finally accept that I genuinely think it's one of my favorite games, because out of the gate, I hated the combos the bosses had, because it was not like any other Dark Souls. So many more bosses into me. And I'm gonna digress purposely for a second. Did anyone ever notice that? Was that just me? Did I just miss the coverage on bosses just repeatedly having like 6, 7 move combos instead of like Dark Souls, where it was just like bam, 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 break, hit. Elden Ring was like quack, 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 breathe, quack, quack, quack. It just never stopped. And it got me smiley frustrated because I was like slamming my desk, and I'm not a rage gamer. I'm usually I'm a very frustrated gamer, but not like physically. Just hard. Good game. Oh, please let me know your opinions. Please let me know how you feel about the current atmosphere with how like development and games being released. Like, is there something you've noticed about this? Is this something that you've noticed for a while? Because something I've definitely had thoughts about, but I really couldn't congeal even with this video. It's just interesting that games just aren't kind of, to me, being released in the same level of care and finesse like other games are. And that's just sad.